Attack on Titan, or Shingeki no Kyojin, is a manga series written and illustrated by Hajime Isayama that was released on September 9 of 2009. Hardly an overnight sensation, Hajime had his share of challenges trying to convince other publishers to take a chance on his first manga venture. All his uncompromising story directions paid off when he finally found a home at Kodansha Limited. The anime series based on its manga was soon made and released on April 2013. And since the final season is here, let us look at the reasons why this anime took the world by storm and is held as one of the best anime series of its time. That first episode. It opens silently. Birds flying across the screen, a slight high-pitched hum begins. Close up to a terrified green eye of a boy, then to a crowd of people looking up, then an inaudible barking dog. The high-pitched hum now louder. Then it goes back to the flying birds soaring the horizon until finally it reaches the wall where a huge billow of smoke is rising, giant hands clutching the top of the wall. The look of terror visible to the crowd as it pans up to the wall again, and slowly a colossal head appears, bones and sinews of face muscles exposed. A gigantic monstrosity that defies all logic. That was the opening sequence. That was how Attack on Titan introduced itself to the world, and what an introduction it was! The first episode also introduced to us the main characters, the Titans, the setting, and the conflict in which the story will unravel. In fact, if I must choose which of the episodes was my favorite, it is this episode. It is suspenseful, in some parts funny, informative, but devastating all in all. The characters. The characters of Attack on Titan are racially ambiguous. Eren Yeager, Mikasa Ackerman, Armin Arlert are not Japanese names in a strict sense, or not at all. I find this harmonious with the world that Hajime Isayama has built. Their physical features even coincide with their given names, and that is something I noticed and appreciated early on. More than that, they are also complex and more drawn out. We are given backstories that explains why they were the way they were, and not just serve as two-dimensional caricatures to move the story forward. You may think you know where your sympathies lie, but as the story goes on, you would find yourself questioning those initial alliances. Characters evolve as they grow, and you watch them make stupid decisions that would either make or break their initial resolve. Character arcs gives us audiences the ability to understand and know them better. The main character, Eren Yeager, was a young kid at the start of the season with seeming anger issues since introduction, and which will only exacerbate at the end of the very first episode. His journey is the most complex out of all the characters, and although he is by no means the strongest or the wisest, he is arguably the most passionate. The story would mostly revolve around him, together with his friends Mikasa and Armin. The three of them are the main characters of this series, and each of them has different attributes that complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. We will also be meeting other interesting personalities in the series. Some will be as memorable and exciting as Levi Ackerman, or funny and ridiculous like Sasha Bros. Most of them will have backstories that will give us more reason to care about their well-being, but will also cause us heartbreak. This anime is not for the faint-hearted indeed, and it is far from a fairy tale. Characters will die, some gruesomely, and it is just how it rolls. The world building. Apart from having a strong set of characters, it is also equally important that their environment complements their storyline. In the case of AOT, we can see that their backdrop setting is European-inspired and starts in the island of Paradis, where the last of humanity is supposed to live inside a three-walled city. Based from the way the people dressed, the system of government, the technology present, and the architectural layout of the houses and walls, it seemed to have been influenced by 19th century design. It is both beautiful and grimy, much like the time period it was inspired from. Of course, the world of AOT itself is far from being fleshed out. As Hajime himself admitted, he did not have much time to really think about reconciling all the different aspects of the world he was trying to build. For one, he did not even think that it would become a multi-chapter manga, much less a worldwide successful anime series that would attract cult followers that will dissect all aspects of this world. Admittedly, he could have done a better job if he had planned for it more carefully. I guess I can forgive those shortcomings because I like the general aesthetic of it all. There are more than enough discussions on fan sites, Reddit and Quora that covers all the questionable misalignment of some detail here and there. I didn't mind most of those issues, but if you do, tell us about it in the comment section below. The symbolism. When Eren describes the predicament inside the walls, like cattle waiting to be slaughtered, I was immediately reminded on how we, as humans, process our meat for consumption. It seemed to be a commentary on the inhumane ways we have treated animals up to this modern era. That was the first symbolism I have noticed early on in the series. Another one is the story of why the Eldians came to live in Paradise. According to the mythology of the Titans, all the founding Titans were descendants of Ymir Fritz, the very first Titan. She married and served the Eldian king, and from her came the other 9 Titans. And Eldians are descendants of the Titans. Because of the Titans' size advantage and capabilities, the Eldians ruled and reigned over the world, bringing destruction on every land they subjugate. Until the time Karl Fritz succeeded the crown and moved his people to the island of Paradise, where he and his people will live in peace. This may as well be an analogy of the Japanese Imperial Army during the World War II era. The Japanese people were brainwashed into thinking that they were also the descendants of the sun goddess Amaterasu, and their emperor a direct descendant from her. They brought much pain and suffering to all the territories they have attacked. And when the war ended, they redrafted their constitution, renouncing war as a sovereign right to settle international disputes against any foreign country. The plight of the remaining Eldians in the land of the Marleyans can also be compared to the situation of the Jewish people during the World War II era, where the Eldians were separated from the general population with a star stitched on their clothing to easily identify them, treated as second-class citizens, and used primarily by the Marleyans as their own weapons against their enemies. These are just some of the symbolisms which are more apparent from the story itself. There are more symbolisms and fan theories out there, and if you want us to discuss them, be sure to leave a comment in the section below. Last, but certainly not the least, the Titans. They are obviously part human still, but something about them is more eerie than your usual typical monster. Maybe that is why they are more horrific, because they look somehow familiar, but devoid of any emotion, rhyme, or reason. Much like a zombie, but in a gigantic scale. And what can be more terrifying than the thought of being eaten alive? The literal ear-to-ear smile of a giant woman who feels nothing and thinks nothing is a haunting image that never really settles easier, no matter how many times you see her. We have seen a lot of monsters on different genres of movies and television. We have been exposed to horror movies that has demonic creatures or ghosts or elements. Zombies are a regular run-of-the-mill go-to horror category. I guess this is why the Titans are scarier. We have never seen anything like it before, but at the same time, they are very familiar. Or maybe it is the fact that they look like us which makes them extra creepy. I could never explain it. I just know that I would never ever want to live in that universe. Thank you for watching. See you on our next.